Hey guys, we modded the Jaguar and we looped all these parts in previous videos, and now we can add the materials and set the scene for the final renderings. Let's start by cleaning up the scene, moving these parts to the Highland folder. I'll add the camera, Ctrl Alt numpad 0 to snap it to the view, then Shift T for the fly mode where we can control it easily with the keys. We can set the viewport size from here. Let's say that we are doing Instagram post or something in 1:1 ratio. I'll increase the focal length a lot to 200, so we have this flattened image like we have it from a far distance. To hide what we see outside, we can just increase the per 2 from here. Split the window so we have the camera there and adjust the views for the next step, the materials. So material preview, and we can select the frame of the head, add a new material. In the shader editor we have this node, which is exactly the same thing that we have here. But in the shader editor we can do more things. We can add and delete new materials from here as well and adjust the basic things like that. We can add first the color. I'll add this green, but you can do whatever you like. We will play with the roughness, adding some texture here. I'll grab the noise texture, Ctrl T to add the mappings and the texture coordinates. For this you have to enable the node wrangler add-on from preferences, this thing. Use the object coordinates of the texture, plug everything to the roughness, and let's plug color ramp there in between. Using the bars we can precise the texture effect. With Ctrl Shift and click we can isolate specific nodes, and this will make the adjustment of this noise texture a way more easier now when we have it black and white. Plug back the BSDF node and let's play with the normal input. If we want to work with this, we need a bump node, normal to normal. I want to add some dots and we can do this very easy with the Voronoi texture. Ctrl T for the mappings, using the object coordinates again. The Voronoi have to be in the height input, not the normal. Then adding the color ramp, which will help us to set this effect the way we want. We can also remove the randomness to get to this pattern. If we plug back the principal BSDF node, we can see what we have. Reduce the strength of the bump a little bit. Usually 1 is too much for a bump node. We can leave it like that and move to the spheres material. We are using geometry nodes here, so even if we add the material and change some stuff like that, the core for example, this won't work. That's because we have to tap into the geometry nodes first and tell to the tree that we want to use this material, using the set material node before the group output. Now if we go back to the shader editor, we can adjust this material the way we want it. We can't shade it smooth like that, just because we have to go again to the geometry node. So we can go back and add the shade smooth node there to the tree. Let's add in the coat to make this more glossy. The sheen is used for dust and cloth materials mainly, but it will give us nice gradient there, something like layer weight node around the edges. We created a few materials, but we can also assign from different places, we don't have to create everything. You can find materials on many places, but in our case I'll use Blender Kit add-on, where we can find a lot of free and paid stuff. I'm not gonna cover how to install the add-on, as there are a lot of tutorials on this topic, but I will show how we can grab and use some free materials in our project. So when we install add-on, we have this bar there at the top, preview visible, and select the materials only. Open the filter and select procedural. We want free stuff there under row to free license, and we can type here what we are looking for. I want to add material with some rusted edges, and here I can find something. With a right click we can check more info. Shout out to this guy for making it. So just grab the material like that and throw it to the object you want. Then if we select it, we have all these nodes in the shader editor that we can play with to adjust this material. We can see how everything is built and arrange it well. I want to change the color, so I have to tweak this color node. I'll leave it like that for now. When we switch to the cycle, we will precise everything. This part on top can be metal with some simple pattern with Voronoi texture. Using object coordinates and color ramp for the roughness. Change the Voronoi tab to Chebychev. I think I pronounced it right. This is where the color ramp shows its strength and how the bars can help us to create all these different effects. The mappings can be used also to offset the location, rotation or scale. If you want to add some depth to this pattern, we can do it with a bump node. Plug it to the normal. Zoom in to check it out what we have. Reduce the strength to something like 0.3. And if you want to invert the bump, you can do it from here. Not sure why, but this material looks like there is no metal in it. Should be all the way up. I'll grab this part next, adding the new material. Roughness down. Duplicate the whole BSDF. I want to add simple dots pattern, and we can mix the two materials with the mix shader node. Now we can use the factor to choose the material like that. And we can also add procedural texture there and use it to tell the factor how to mix these materials. The black and the white color bars represent the two materials below. Play a little bit more with the settings, but we have this pattern, so I'll leave it like that and move on to the next part. Here I want to mix again a few materials, and we can do it with a magic texture. I'll plug everything like that, then slide the bars to get this pattern. Add some colors and play with the texture depth and scale. Create something like this. From here we can just duplicate the whole setup and mix it with a mix shader node like we did before. We can add different colors to this material. Choose whatever you like. I will stay with the orange-pink combination. And let's duplicate these nodes to save some time. We will use them to control the pattern. Again, these two bars represent the materials below. We can also offset the material pattern with the mappings. Make this one metallic and decrease the roughness on this one. I'll play further with all the settings here, but that's how we did the shading on this part as well. The next thing will be very simple, the eyes. Just a black material with roughness down and specular up, all the way up. Link the materials on this and let's check the next part. Come back to the nose to do a few more stuff. We can separate this part and give it a different material. Here on the side we can add some emission. If we insert this face, we can add and assign the material, like that. Just remove the principal BSDF node and plug only the emission. The muzzle parts will be also very simple. Just a basic material with a core and lower the roughness, that's it. We can link the materials, but make sure to separate it first, so we can adjust it without affecting the other material. What we're gonna do here is again very simple dots material using the Voronoi texture. Just two materials to the color ramp, orange and green. I'll adjust the bars and touch the texture to get a few more dots. Reduce the roughness. I'll add subsurface on this one and move to the next part. Inside the mouth is just this dark red color with the roughness low. We are going to do the teeth, one material for all of them. White color with specular up. And add a little bit of variations to the roughness with a noise texture. I'll isolate the color ramp with Ctrl Shift and play here with the bars so we can get the effect we're looking for. Touch the noise texture settings and precise everything, but once we are done we can just link the materials to the rest. For the tongue, I'll pick this pinkish material and reduce the roughness. Add subsurface and let's grab the bump node for some depth pattern with a wave texture. Reduce the strength a lot and change the wave type to rings. Pick the axis and let's adjust the settings. We can try out the generated texture coordinates. And let's say that this one is done. The chin is also very simple, only a color with a little bit of glossiness. We will add different materials to all these side parts. For the first one below, we can create pattern with a Musgrave texture. I heard that in the next version the Musgrave texture will be part of the noise texture, for now it's a separate node. Adding some colors and reduce the roughness. Mix it again with the shader node. Duplicate the Musgrave node setup and plug it to the factor with a color ramp. We need one more material. Change the color and leave it like that for now. Make this part metallic with some yellowish color. Here we can just take the color and the material from this part. Just a green color here with the subsurface and the coat on. Lower the roughness as well to something like this. On the frame we can add only emission color. Final parts for shading. On this big part that popping out of the mouth, we can add different materials to each of these sections, or at least 3 of them, so it works nice with our looping animation. If you remember, we offset there the keyframes to repeat on every 3 of these cylinders, so I'll just duplicate it now 3 times in edit mode. Bring back the offset so it's matching with the new object, and now we can add the different materials to each one of these. Just a simple material in yellow color with reduced roughness. Add and assign the other materials also. On this part we can add the wave texture again to create very simple pattern with 2 colors. All the hard job is done, and now we can set the final scene with the camera animation and all this stuff. We are about to use cycles. If you have GPU, you better switch to this for faster rendering. Only 64 samples for viewport and rendering, otherwise we have to edit a lot. Denoise on, and let's change the core management look to punchy. We did the square ratio earlier, but let's change it back to the landscape. I'll position the camera and scale it up to be easier to find and select. This will be the rendering view, so change it here to cycles. We need a light in the scene. I'll move it up there and increase the size and the power like that. Here up in the corner you can see the values you're changing. I'll add a plane just so we can bounce back some of the light to the head. Doesn't have to be always light, we can use different things like reflection surfaces or a simple plane like in this case. Adding a background as well with one more plane. Place it behind the head and adjust it. I will pick a black color, but you can choose whatever. One more light we can place behind the head. This will be a pointed light with some different color. This will give some nice reflection to the background as well. From the front view we can duplicate the top light and place it on the side. Try to put it behind the camera to light up the edge and give some of the rim light. The last one we can place it next to the camera to fill the shadows. The lighting is done for now, so let's grab the camera and see what we can do with it. Enable depth of field, and if we press E on the distance we can do it like that. Enable the limit, which will add this empty at the end of the camera, so we can see the distance and where will be the focus on. We are about to move the camera and animate it, so let's add an empty, adjust only the size to be easier to work with. Add it as a focus object here. Now wherever is the empty, there will be the focus. Let's decrease the f-stop to get more of the blur. We have here different composition guides that can help us to adjust the composition to fit nice in the frame. At the end I'll render the animation like that with a still camera, but I'll do also animation with a few different views, making the camera move from one position to another. So let me show you how we can do it. It's very simple animation, but we have to adjust a couple of things after that, like the background, the lights and all this stuff. So let's start with the camera animation first. I'll add location and rotation keyframes at the beginning. Duplicate and offset the keyframes with a few frames, because we want to stay on the same place for some time. I'll move a few frames for the new position. From the camera view, press Shift Tilt so we can set the new position where we want it. So find the new position and add another location and rotation keyframes, and we have the animation. If we play to check what we have, we can see that there is an issue with the transition, where the composition is not in focus when moves. That's why we can add track to constraint to the camera and select the empty that we use it as target for the focus. So precise the position for this empty, as it will be responsible for many things. So we have this simple animation, and we can just do the same thing to get a few more different views. Just have to remember that at the end we have to put the same keyframes like in the beginning. We can just duplicate them to make sure it will loop. So we created the camera path, but if we go to cycles we can see some issues. That's because we have only the camera moving without the background or the lights. The easiest thing will be to pair everything to the camera, but it just won't work for some of the views because of the light. So I will pair only the background and the point light behind the head. And now everywhere we move the camera, they will be there to catch up. The only thing left now is the light. So let's add one more empty. I'll grab a cube, so it's not the same with the focus empty. I'll pair the light to the empty and use it to control the light's position. We just have to add the keyframes at the same place with the camera keyframes. Add the keyframes, then go to the next position Rotate and move the empty when needed to get some nice lighting. Then add the new keyframes till you have them all. Let's say we are done with all this and we are ready for the final animation. We all know that cycles take a lot of time to render, so it's always a good idea to do some test renders. We can do a viewport animation first to make sure everything is looping. I will choose just where to be saved, then change the format to FFmpeg video. Go to the view where we have viewport render animation. This will render only what we see in the viewport and is very fast. So in a few minutes we have the viewport animation where we can check how everything works and adjust it if needed. Like we can go back and tweak the keyframes, we can move multiple object keyframes like that. Or add a different colors to the background light to make it more interesting. So I did a few more tweaks before I render the final thing. Like here on this part, just a simple 360 rotation for one of the patterns. Added here magic texture. This one is only a leaf image I found on Unsplash. It's only affecting the bump for some depth effect. This one I have to change it to UV so the texture stays still when looping and repeating the segments. And with this I did something similar, but changed it to generated. That was everything we did for the Jaguar. I hope you like what we're doing here, and if so, I'll see you in the next video.